everybody, welcome back to Real Estate Cookies, your commercial terms, and our meeting on Wednesday did not get recorded, so I'm going to record it again. I'm very sorry about that. Good information, and I want to share it here. I'll do the best I can to gather all the information and present it how we did on Wednesday night. Had a good crew, great questions, and just sorry, I had little technical difficulties. I pressed the wrong button. So we'll get started on real estate terms. I'm going to share my screen with you, and here we go. So what we're doing is talking about the real estate commercial terms. And the reason we want to go over terms is because when you're looking at commercial real estate, it really is the foundation to understanding how it is valued. And if you can do it for bigger projects that you think, well, I don't really have a chance of buying those right now, it'll help you with the smaller projects as well. So having an overall understanding of it is what you have to do to in order to be successful. So that's why we're going to go through them. And there's really, I mean, there are probably 50 really complicated terms. There's only 3 you really have to understand, and they're not that complicated. So we're going to go through that. I love this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. Every person who invests in well-selected real estate in a growing section of a prosperous community adopts the surest and safest method of becoming independent, for real estate is the basis of wealth. Theodore Roosevelt. I love that. You got to pick the right property in the right market, in the right location, and then finance it the right way and manage it the right way. And when you do that, you build wealth. So what are these terms we have to know? The most important term is NOI, or net operating income. And the net operating income shows how much the property earns after operating expenses, but before any other loan payments or interest payments. Basically, it's showing you that if you paid cash for the property, what your cash flow would be. But don't get confused, because if it shows cash flow of $300,000, that doesn't mean that's your cash flow. That means the NOI, that's how much money is there to pay debt. So you would take the $300,000, say you have 50%, maybe it's 50%, just for easy math. You have $150,000 of cash flow and $150,000 of debt payments. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. But a couple terms, really easy. Potential gross income, or PGI, that's how much the property would make if it's fully rented 100% of the time. And that never happens, but we got to start somewhere. So that's why we start with potential gross income. We take the rental units times 12, maybe for 12 months at the maximum, what it would be. And then we subtract a vacancy factor out of that number. So that maybe it's 10%. So in this example, it's $350,000. Subtract that, it's 10% off, $35,000. It gives the EGI, or effective gross income, and that's $315,000. That effective gross income of $315,000, you take that minus, you take the expenses off of that number. And so here the number of expenses is $110,000, or it's 35%. What I like to teach is that when you start analyzing a property, you're going to start pretty wide. You're going to use generalities and percentages, and just to make sure everything kind of fits in the box. And then as you get closer down in the details, you're going to refine it to get away from percentages, but actually down to real numbers. But the percentages are kind of your guardrails. You want to make sure things are in there. So you don't want more than 10% vacancy. You want to try and get it less than that. You want to try to get 35% expenses. Places that have high taxes, it might be more. You know, if it's super high, you might have opportunity to reduce that through management. It might be an opportunity. And if it's super low, it might be a factor they're not showing you everything. So it's kind of like a guardrail. 35, 40%, depending on your industry, especially in multifamily, which is what we're looking at right here. That's kind of what we're looking at. So that gives you $110,000 of expenses. You take the effective gross income expenses, it gives you the NOI, or the net operating income, of $204,750. Now, don't rub your hands and think, hey, that's my cash flow. No, that's how much money you have to service the debt. Now, if you pay cash for the building, then that is your cash flow. But if you're not, you're getting a loan, you got to take that out of it. But that's what NOI is. You're going to see that number used. It really is, that's why I'm starting with it, the most important number. Second of all is the capitalization rate. So cap rate takes the NOI and applies a number to it of return. Okay, so the easiest way to look at this is a 10% cap rate. So the 10% cap rate is $204,750. A 10% return on that will give you a value at $2 million. So if you paid $2,047,500 for the building cash, every year you would receive $204,750 back. That would be a 10% return on your money. And if you paid $2,275,000 for it and get the same return back, you'd be getting a 9% return and all the way down the line. That's how the cap rate works. It measures the property's value based on the income, and then it also measures risk. So why would you buy something at a 6% cap rate when you could buy 10? Well, different parts of the country have other factors going on. So a very secure piece of real estate in a really good location that has a long history of rentals, easy management, high appreciation of the real estate is going to go up in value. You're going to get a lower cap rate because there's not as much risk. For example, if you put your money in the bank in a CD for like a three-year CD with the bank, they're going to pay you very little interest. Why? Because there's no risk to it. They're going to give the money back in 3 years. So they're not paying any risk. They're not paying anything. Put the money in the stock market, you have tons of risk, but you have potential for tons of reward. So as you lower the risk, you lower the return. As you increase the risk, you increase the return potential. Okay. So as you see here, the same amount of income in different properties will buy you a different return. Most investors, when you're starting off, if you don't have a lot of cash, you're trying to find a deal, you're trying to find sweat equity you can put into this thing to make money, you're going to be buying at a 9, 10, 11 cap rate in there. The real goal is to buy a 10 cap rate, sell it at 8 cap rate, because now you're increasing the value and you're getting a better return because the property, you stabilized it, you've made it better, and now people they're willing to pay for a lower cap rate because you've taken out some of the risk through good management or low vacancy. So that's how the capitalization rate, you're going to see those two things playing off each other. The third one is operating expense ratio. And this tells you how much the property's income is being spent on operating the building or the business. Simple way to measure the efficiency and compare properties. So in this example, $350,000 bought you with 10% vacancy at $35,000. You have effective gross income of $315,000, but then you have operating expense of 35%. You get that by dividing the operating expenses by the effective gross income, and that'll give you the percentage. This way, when you're looking at a property, you're not digging into, well, what's the water bill and what's the taxes and what's the internet cost and what's the maintenance cost, and like you will get into that as you get going further. But in the beginning, you can take what they've given you and see if it falls into that, and then you can start digging more if you're more interested in the property. Okay, so I'm going to look at a piece of property with you guys. This is in Milwaukee. It's called Brewers Hill. It's a nice property. I'll pull it up here on the website for you. Let me just, like we've done before, we go here and we go to LoopNet. Okay, and then we go over here and we hit multifamily for sale. Over here to multifamily. Okay, multifamily. I'm going to hit Wisconsin. And it's going to pull up properties. All right, first one up, Brewers Hill. There we go. I looked through a lot of them, and this one, ironically, is just at the beginning. But it's a unique property in Milwaukee, in a decent area of Milwaukee. It's an older building, as you'll see. But right at the beginning, you're going to see cap rate, 7.5%. 7.5%. You're also going to see, if you go down here, I'll keep going down to this right here, you're going to see net operating income, 241. So what did they do? They did it a little bit differently. They took gross rent, that's basically, gross rent means this is how much they took in rent. They didn't give you the other two calculations. They took the vacancy out of it, which isn't really the right way to do it. I don't know why they did it that way, but they did. And they have a pet fee. And I love this. They have a parking rent fee, an amenity income, reimbursement income, miscellaneous income, all different ways that they're making money, which gives you the effective gross income of $386,722. Then you have all the expenses, management fee, general administration, all these different expenses they have, which gives you the direct expenses, insurance, property tax, operating income. And they take this minus this they take the operating expenses minus the income, to get the net operating income of $241,925. What's interesting about this property is that they claim that the vacancy rate is only 2%, that it's like full all the time. What's more interesting about this is that this is all studios. There's your room, living room, kitchen, a little closet, but it's probably bathroom. That's it. It's all studios, but remember, real estate, location, location, location. This thing is in a neighborhood where you can walk to where the Milwaukee Bucks play. It's close to downtown and restaurants and all the hubbub of downtown Milwaukee. You're close to that. So you're attracting a younger crowd, a younger professional crowd that they can deal with studios. And so you have just a full thing of studios, but it is 98% leased. I don't like that mix. I don't know if I like the studios, but the advantage to it is you don't have a lot of kids in there. And so you won't have as much damage to the place. You don't have families. You have just young professionals that are probably not there very much. And they probably have to keep their place nice. They're paying a good rent. So there's some upside to it. It's kind of a unique property. Okay. So this Brewers Hill, just found on LoopNet. I'm not saying go out and buy it. I'm just saying this is what we're analyzing. It's a decent property. It's kind of cool. But let's take a deeper look into it. Okay. So I'm going to go back to I'm going to go back to here. Okay. And this is the paperwork that they gave us, okay, of all the different things. How do we look at this and make sense of it? Again, I'm going to go through the things really quick. Effective gross income, you just say income, but we kind of know what's going on, 386. We look at the expenses, 144. Net operating income, 241,925. I like to get a calculator out and do the math myself, because sometimes people make mistakes. They add wrong, they miss a line. So you can kind of do the quick math yourself if you'd like. But that's how this building is playing out. So what does all that mean? What does it mean? Let's take a quicker look at it. In the commercial terms on Brewers Hill, you have an effective gross income of 386,722 and net operating income of 241. What's the expense ratio? We divide the two, we get an expense ratio of 37%. Not bad. I mean, it's pretty good, honestly. 37% tells you that it's operating pretty efficiently. It probably has majority of the things in it, so it's right. It's within the guardrails. Okay. So what does this mean as far as value? Well, with a net operating income 241 of the money you could use to buy something, if you just paid cash for the building at 2.4 million, you would get a 241,000 per year return on your money, or 10% return. But we're going to finance it, so that value will actually go up a little bit, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. But as you go down through, you see the different ways that what's going on. What are they asking for the property? They're asking 3.2 for the property. Okay, they're asking 3.2, and they're at that 5, right in that 5%. They're right in here of that cap rate and the value that they're asking for. So they're asking a pretty nice amount for this, but it does have some positive things to it. But this is the ratio that you would look at. So if we take a look at the financing of this, we're going to use the basic commercial terms that you're going to get out there, which is 20% down or 80% loan to value. So they're going to give you 80% of the purchase price. And when you're looking at this, you're going to see the cap rates give you very different cash flow with the same terms. And the price goes up as well as you get in the lower cap rates, and your amount of down payment goes up as well, and your return goes down. So you think, well, why would anyone buy at these prices? Oftentimes, the lower cash flows, the lower cap rates are because someone will have a building that they've owned for a long time, and they've paid it off, and then they take that money because they don't want to actually receive it and pay the taxes on it. They'll 1031 exchange it into another building, so they'll almost pay all cash for the building. And then they don't want a lot of headache. They want a lot of volatility in it. And so then they will as they put more cash down, they'll get more return on it and have less risk. So that's where people buy at the lower cap rates. But when you're starting, you don't typically do that. But if you look at this, you think, well, that's not a lot. What's my return? If you look at the bottom, if you buy at the 10 cap, a down payment of $483,000 generates $58,000 worth of income, which results in a 12% return on your cash. So that's not a bad return. And that's only looking at one facet of the return. Because when you buy an apartment building or any real estate, that's only one part of it is your cash flow. You're getting deductions for the business, which are a lot of ways to write deductions into these businesses. You're also getting appreciation as you own the building. So as you own the building, who's paying the mortgage down? You're not, the tenants are. So the tenants are paying your mortgage down, and the value of the building is going up because, one, you're managing it more, you're increasing the NOI. Also, just natural appreciation of buildings. If you buy in the right market, it goes up at a steady clip. But if you buy a really good market, it'll go up at a really high clip. So that you're getting the return on your 483 could give you a 12% return over, each year for 10 years. But then when you sell the building, now you're getting that 483 and 12% return may turn into a 25, 30% return. 40%. I've seen 50 and 60% returns. I mean, that means you're putting 43 into the building. Maybe you make 500,000 on the building or 600,000 on the building, and you get your money back. So calculate that return. It gets pretty big pretty quick. So there's a lot of ways that you have to look at these buildings of how they produce income for you and not just focus only on the cash flow. But in the beginning, we're not buying only for appreciation. We're buying for cash flow, and then appreciation is a gift on top of it. But you need to understand how the NOI works with everything and what the financing does to it. General rule of thumb, 10% cap rate will cash flow with 20% down. They'll also cash flow with owner financing, meaning that if you said I don't have $483,000, what if the seller, and you can watch my other video on seller financing for a more detailed explanation of it. But that would take you, if the seller held 10%, they would hold half of that 483. Then you don't have to bring in some $240,000. That's maybe a little more manageable. Maybe you get it from your dad. Maybe you pull it out of your house. Maybe you get all kinds of ways you can do it. But in general, a 10% cap rate will cash flow fully financed. So if you have to go out and borrow the 483, the property will still cash flow at a 10 cap or 11 cap. You get to 9 and 8, you better have some money in there or a way to really increase the effective gross income pretty quickly. Okay, so that's kind of how those play together in there in order to make all these things cash flow, finance, all the different items. So now the reason we go through this is because, again, I want you to understand how the numbers work and how they play off each other. So as you look for deals, you know what you're looking for, and you know what you're looking at, and you kind of know what questions to ask. In January, we're going to take and go through how to find deals. So LoopNet has lots of deals listed, and I've purchased things off that I found on LoopNet and ended up buying them, negotiated them, and found them. But I've also found things that are off market, not listed, referred to me by other people, all those different things. And so in January, we'll go through how to find deals, and not just $2 million apartment buildings. We're houses and duplexes and small little things as well. But let me just give you one little teaser on that and tip, and as you incorporate this into that, is that as you're driving, keep your eyes open for buildings that have signs of a motivated seller. Motivated seller is just as it sounds. It's a seller of a piece of real estate that, because of life circumstances, they are very motivated to get rid of the building. Here's just a couple things that can happen. You can have someone that is gifted a piece of property through an inheritance. You can have someone that maybe was their husband's property and the wife is not in charge of it because the husband's sick or has passed away or divorced. You can have properties that just people have lost track of. They don't care about them anymore, or they've not managed them appropriately. The bank is in the middle of a foreclosure. And usually those signs are pretty obvious. You have overgrown weeds. You have windows that are maybe boarded up. It just doesn't look like it's taken care of. That goes for single family homes, duplexes, commercial properties, little, warehouses and storage places. And just keep your eyes open as you drive to work and throughout the day, so you'll see properties that come up, you kind of catch your eye, and you'll start driving towards them. I remember we were driving home, Simon and I, in the car, and I looked to my left and I saw this house with really overgrown weeds and grass is everywhere. And I was like, look at that house. And he was, what are you talking about? I said, right there. He still couldn't see it. So I turned, drove over there. I said, look at this house. Okay, it looks disgusting. I said, exactly. That's smelling. I smell money. He just looked at a gross house, but I smelled the deal. Because why are the weeds overgrown? Why does it look abandoned? Why is the house abandoned? Motivated seller. And so we're going to go through all those tactics to begin finding those types of places. And there's systems out there. There's just things you can do that are pretty simple. But your homework is to tell two people that you're a real estate investor. And so this was really hard for me in the beginning because I didn't have much property. I didn't feel I was ready to call myself a real estate investor. But when I did that, what do you do? Oh, I work here, but I also invest in real estate on the side. People get so excited. Tell you like, oh, my mom's trying to sell a property, or oh, I got this horrible property I'm trying to get rid of, or I know so and so. Or a month later, they'll come back to you and say, hey, I was talking to my buddy, and he's got a piece of hunting land he needs to sell. Would you be interested in looking at it? All because you said you're a real estate investor. Okay. And so that's your homework. Tell two people you're a real estate investor. I'm going to email out all these documents and this PowerPoint and the Bruce Hill thing for you to look at. And what I would just go through and manually do the calculations on the NOI, on the gross income, the percentages, all those types of things. Go through and learn them and work them. Look up a couple properties on LoopNet, run the numbers, just so you get a feel for it. Okay, and then you will be able to look at properties with some semblance of like, hey, this is interesting, this is not interesting. I'm always available for you. Let me know if you have any questions, and by next time we'll have it done and recorded so you can do it. But for now, this is what we have. And again, stay out there and keep looking and stay hungry. All right, take care. Bye.